For a week each fall, the Smithsonian's Cooper Hewitt Museum celebrates design.
One thing I like about this idea of the Design Week and all these awards that are being given out is that it kind of like, it corrals design, sort of looks at the whole thing as one big piece that exists in the world, and I really like that.
Gathering designers from all over the world in New York City.
What is good design? Good design to me is something which delivers both functionally, socially, and emotionally.
And does so in an original way, and also in a very
simple way, I would say.
Simple or essential way.
Respectful of the environment, respectful of people's habits, respectful of people's emotions.
A teen design fair attracts the next generation.
We're sophomores, so were you thinking of this at that age?
I have to say I wasn't. I'm so impressed with all the high schoolers that are here today. I don't think I had any clue.
And introduces them to the design world's stars.
I would not have chosen another life for myself. It is the most thrilling thing that I can imagine doing.
Try everything and like make mistakes and, you know, try to fix them or not, or just start over, you know, like now's the time.
The highlight of the week is a sold-out black tie gala with an Oscar-worthy awards ceremony.
Fashion award today.
And while it's not just about the awards,
the National Design Awards is actually creating a community. And to be acknowledged for that, it's wonderful to belong to that community.
designers and patrons alike enjoy the recognition.
Your work really pushes boundaries, but the results are always gorgeous.
Please join me for a toast.
And the party. With great expectations for the future of design.
It's just an exciting time, so it's good to celebrate this moment and this century. And what I expect is going to be a real kind of revolution, external and internal, and obviously design is central to that.
So what is design? I don't think it's a question of beauty necessarily. I mean, there are actually ugly things that I actually find interesting.
Design is purposeful planning.
Design is finding a solution to a problem.
Design for me is the creation of something you either need or you want.
It's one thing to accomplish the goal, you know, to build a bridge that will get you from one side to the other. But then to build the Brooklyn Bridge, it becomes a symbol.
I mean, design is what can create poetry out of everyday existence.
Something unique or something that you feel like is familiar to you, but there is something very new about it that you haven't seen before.
There isn't a thing that isn't in one way or another designed.
Actually, the one thing I would redesign is my nose, because I hate it. It's too big.
One has to consider the literal, the conceptual, the spiritual, the social, cultural, metaphysical, and ergonomics.
Great design is the sum of all the parts.
The human condition can actually be improved through improving the environment.
And that's why you can evolve and you can design and redesign and triple redesign through time.
One of the most important things about design is that you don't really abide by any rules.
There is a greater awareness placed on design and the quality of design than there ever was before.
The future is about collaborating and trying things that you haven't done before and new technologies.
For me, the hope for the future in terms of the designer is that technology doesn't overshadow communication.
It's about being sustainable, it's about being green.
Less and less you're interested in designing objects, and more you're interested in designing ideas.
One thing I like about this idea of the Design Week and all these awards that are being given out is that it kind of like, it corrals design.
Design is finding a solution to a problem.
There isn't a thing that isn't in one way or another designed.
Important things about design is that you don't really abide by any rules.
It's incredibly impossible to open a CD, so I'd like to make one really, really simple.
Actually, the one thing I would redesign is my nose.
Less and less you're interested in designing objects, and more you're interested in designing ideas.
design is purposeful planning.
Bad design is when you notice it.
The literal, the conceptual, the spiritual.
Poetry out of everyday existence.
Wow, what a question. What is design? I think that's a big, big, big answer. Design is, you know, considering things around you and somehow like innovating them, you know, thinking them through and thinking about how they can be better or more beautiful or more functional. So it's a very, very, very big answer, what design is. Sometimes it's as simple as like, you know, changing one line of something. And sometimes it's as complicated as rethinking something entirely. Good design is definitely relative. You know, it changes from continent to continent. Like, I think, you know, what French or Italian people think is good design is different from perhaps what Americans think of as good design, or vice versa. You know, I love economy, so anything that abbreviates something else is really good to me. Anything that sort of shows off a material to its greatest advantage without sort of flashing it in my face, I think is really good design, you know. I tend to be very like sort of literal and moral about design. So like if something is meaningful, I really like it, you know. But then at the same time, I really like kind of kooky things too that have no meaning. So it's, you see, it's very, very broad. What is bad design? What is bad design? Bad design is when you notice it. That's what I think, is when you notice it as being design. You kind of don't want to notice it as being design. I remember before the redesign of the Modern, I was having this conversation with one of the curators, and he said to me, oh, you know, we had a few meetings with a few designers, and this one designer said to us, you know, there's this price, and then there's this price if you don't want to notice that there's been a renovation. And it was like, you know, 3 times higher than the price that he had presented at first. And I thought, oh, that's smart. I mean, that's exactly right. You know, you don't want to notice something, you know. You know what I'd love to redesign is the packaging for CDs, because I find them so incredibly impossible to work with. It's so incredibly impossible to open a CD, so I'd like to make one really, really simple. And I don't know why they put that tape all over it that you have to get off. That's really bad design. That's bad design. CD covers are really poorly designed. There are so many things that inspire me, but on a regular basis, it seems that light and color inspire me a lot. Like when I'm in Long Island in the summer and there's all this different kind of lighting that create all of these different colors, like so many greens on the grass, you know. And that inspires me to no end, the idea of weather. Weather inspires me, you know, weather, light, color. Right? The other thing that inspires me a great deal is music, and I don't know why. That's a strange thing. I tend to like see colors when I hear music, and I tend to see visions when I hear music. And I'm not saying they're great visions. I'm just saying they are, like I am besieged with ideas when I listen to music often. The other thing that inspires me are figures. I'm very inspired by the human anatomy. Women's bodies, men's bodies, they inspire me. This is kind of like just a big space, and it's a lot of design that goes on here, but also a lot of television production and a lot of production that goes on. So you name it and it goes on here, you know? Every single thing goes on here. People design, and I have meetings, and we have many, many, many fittings going on all the time, for which I'm always late. Actually, I'm always late for my fittings, but. I would consider myself a designer, not a populist designer. You know, I mean, everybody aspires at different levels. There are people who actually save money in order to afford my clothes at Target, and so for them, I want to offer as much value as to those people who think, oh my gosh, it's so inexpensive, I could buy 3. You know what I mean? I think that way. That's how I think. There's something like there's something of a turnoff about a person dressed in clothes from head to toe that are all terribly, terribly expensive. It's like eating a meal without bread. You know, all you can eat is, sort of truffles and caviar. I mean, you need a little bread in there. You need a little bit of just plain old good stuff in there. You know, there's something better about it when someone has a little dime store kerchief wrapped around their neck. I don't know why, I just like it better. One thing I like about this idea of the Design Week and all these awards that are being given out is that it kind of like, it corrals design. It doesn't sort of break things out and say, oh, this is fashion design, and this is industrial design, and this is graphic design. It sort of looks at the whole thing as one big piece that exists in the world, and I really like that because in order for fashion to have a context, it has to relate to other things. In order for industry to have context, it has to relate to the world we live in. Do you know what I mean? So like, to look at that as one design week or a few design awards, it's kind of wonderful because it says like, this is the best of what we have out there, period. What do I consider the future of design? It's another big question, I don't know. If I knew, I'd be a psychic and I'd be having readings also in the space, which is coming actually, but no, I'm just teasing. I think what's next for me is more of what I'm doing now, and I think that maybe the direction will change a little bit, and it will become more about communication, I would consider myself a designer, not a populist designer. You know, I mean, everybody aspires at different levels. There are people who actually save money in order to afford my clothes at Target, and so for them, I want to offer as much value as to those people who think, oh my gosh, it's so inexpensive, I could buy 3. You know what I mean? I think that way. That's how I think. There's something like there's something of a turnoff about a person dressed in clothes from head to toe that are all terribly, terribly expensive. It's like eating a meal without bread. You know, all you can eat is, sort of truffles and caviar. I mean, you need a little bread in there. You need a little bit of just plain old good stuff in there. You know, there's something better about it when someone has a little dime store kerchief wrapped around their neck. I don't know why, I just like it better.
It's so universal. There's almost no activity that you couldn't call a design activity. You know, it's something that happened to this field because it became a glamour profession. And for a long time, it wasn't that.
I think fashion is really for young people, and it's really the age of 20 to 40 that turns me on the most.
It is a very, very long time before you get anywhere, you know, it really is. No matter what, like even people that you think have made it overnight, they just haven't made it overnight.
I'm trying to go to like FIT. I'm going for design and fashion.
If you're interested in fashion designing, it's a great school because it teaches you the craft.
You know, it's a high fashion store, so the windows have to have the right image. They have to be very ultra groovy and very hip and very fashionable, because that's what the product is inside the store.
It's really about feeling great about what you're producing, and then obviously putting your own mark on it.
But you know what else? Like once you start school, they'll talk about internships, and that is like the best way, because that's sort of like a little mini project one way.
Sometimes finding the right material takes the same amount of effort, the same amount of time, but it makes a huge difference in the way people experience the space.
I don't think I had any clue what I wanted to do when I was in high school. Fashion and design wasn't something that was offered at my high school. I never even really thought of it as an option. I always loved clothing. I was very fashionable in high school, but I didn't think I could be a designer.
The future of design is an unknown, and it's always surprising you. I think especially working with the young designers who are growing up so passionate and intrigued by design and so good at design that it really makes me excited about the future of design because I don't know what it is.
The one thing you have to do is you have to work like hell. You know, it's something that happened to this field because it became a glamour profession. And for a long time it wasn't that. But now that it, over the last 20 years, I would say, became so glamorized, everybody wants to get into the field. So thousands of graduates come out of school every year, and the economy has not matched the number of graduates. So it's become extremely competitive. You have to be very committed. I mean, you have to really be well trained and smart about what you're doing. So it used to be easier, I have to say. A half century ago, it was much easier.
As years go on, you know, it gets even more competitive.
Well, it's very odd because for a while it wasn't a profession that was very well defined, so people didn't know that they could go into it or not. It's a little bit like the chefs now. You know,